Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the fourth and final webinar of CISM Prep, a short course presented by IT Masters on behalf of Charles Sturt University. My name is Guy Coward and I'll be your MC. Your mentor is Jeremy Costa, of course. We hope you're well. May your curves be ever flatter wherever you're listening. Not much we can say that will be of any use. Yeah. So we'll just carry on. Housekeeping, as usual, we use Zoom for our webinars to encourage questions and the use of chat during the webinar. We ask that you direct all questions relevant to course content to the Q&A section, and that you send all administration type questions, dates and times and exam availability and all that sort of stuff, to the support team in chat. You can chat with panelists only or to all of your fellow students, and you can make that choice by toggling through the drop-down box once you've opened the chat log. We'll have a really big Q&A session, I assume, at the end of this webinar, given it's the final one. If a question is particularly relevant, I'll put it to Jeremy as soon as possible. Hannah, as usual, is around tonight in an administrative and technical support role for IT Masters. She's also responsible for the course page, which is where you find all the other materials needed for this course. And hit us up in the chat if you need more info about that. We'll talk about, I was talking about this earlier, but now that we've got the formal recording, we'll talk about both the course exam and the CISM exam. Any questions you have about either of those at the end of the lecture. I assume, therefore, the Q&A session will go pretty long. But yeah, we'll just keep on going until everyone's lost interest. Hello, Jeremy. What tales of the week? How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Guy. How are you?
Yeah, floating along. Not going too stir crazy yet. I'm working from home. Jeremy said that he was working from home too now.
Yes, I've been working from home for a week, which has been a lot of fun. Fighting for space in the house with chasing the kids from room to room as I try and take phone calls and Zoom meetings.
Yeah, a big challenge, I assume, for everyone out there.
Yeah.
And I assume it's a big challenge for those who aren't able to work from home as well, have to go in and do things.
Yeah, that's true. All right, shall I kick off, Guy? Is that good? I think you've disappeared. All right.
Yes,
good.
yes, please do, yes. As I fumble for my mute button, heavens above. Dead air is horrible.
That's fine. All right, so we're into the last week of this short course. And I have to say, this is my favorite part of the CISM and the domains in the CISM. So domain 4, information security, incident management. Now, I like this because it gives us, and I say this in a lot of my courses, and I've already said it in this course, it gives information security professionals a chance to be the good guys, the chance to be the heroes, to help the organization through tough times and to limit damage. And that's not often the case. If you think about risk governance and you think about cybersecurity strategies and you think about policies, we're often the policemen walking around the organization figuratively and also in the flesh, trying to get people to align with the rules to keep the organization safe. Well, when everything goes a bit awry and we have an incident and there's some exposure or some unauthorized access or some damage that is being done, the technical knowledge of the information security team and the pre-thought and pre-work and planning that they've gone through to smooth that over and to limit damage is what can really save the organization. But even more than that, it's not just about handling an incident so that the organization can get back up and running quickly, but also it's a vital opportunity to make sure the organization learns from its mistakes and make sure they make changes so there's not a reoccurrence. And that is the key for information security incident management. And I will say that incident management done well can actually change the fortunes of the information security team within the organization. So I've seen a good incident report actually change reporting lines, actually change the communication with the information security team and make it a lot more healthy and active in the organization. So I encourage you all to be very diligent with your information security management, making sure that you have a good incident response plan and that you do excellent incident reports that are legible at many levels, including the executive level, so that the organization can learn from its mistakes and rely on the information security team. So that's the preamble. I'm very passionate about this part of it because I think done incorrectly, it is a massively missed opportunity to fix things up. So the basic phases of incident response, the CISM makes it quite complex. They've got all these different line items on the left. So you can see it goes all the way through from planning through analysis, all the way down post-incident review and retention of evidence, all these different stages. But really, I take from the SANS incident response course, the 6 key areas: preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. And not all incidents fit into this, but mostly they do. Mostly they will sit between, you want to first, let's forget about preparation for the moment, but you first want to identify that an incident is occurring and be able to understand its severity. You then need to take measures to contain the incident. No matter kind of what it is, you stop it from causing further damage or becoming more exposed. And then you want to eradicate. So stop it from, stop the effects of the incident occurring. This is more alike, aligned, with operating system incidents. So you eradicate kind of usernames and files off the system. But eradication also might be cleaning up accounts in Office 365 or getting rid of a web shell on a web server. And then there's recovery, which is getting the systems back to where they are and getting where they should be and how the business can use them. And then lessons learned is obviously going through root cause analysis, doing a good amount of risk assessment on how this occurred and how, and providing tactical and strategic recommendations to resolve. That's true, Andrew. I've always been passionate about this topic. Some of the most stressful times in organizations, and I've dealt with it must be, I don't know, it's dozens of incidents over my years as an information security manager or a information security specialist to really resolve. And I think, I think it's been some of the stressful times, but also the most rewarding times as well.
Is Andrew a former student or a colleague?
I don't know. Andrew, have you been in one of my incident response?
Or perhaps in other short courses as well.
Yeah.
I've done a few of these.
I've masters.
He's done the masters.
Good on you.
Very good.
Yeah. All right. So on the left-hand side is basically the right-hand side broken down into a few more steps. In any of these points, you do want detection and initiation is part of identification and containment. It's just been a little bit more broken apart into subcategories. It's good to be specific, but most of my incident response plans actually fit around this, well, minus preparation in this kind of situation. And the reason why I leave preparation out of it is because preparation is actually putting the plans together. Lessons learned also make sure that you include updating the plan in the preparation. All right. Now, fire is always my favored style of incident. Sorry, no, that sounds terrible. I'm not into burning things, although I do like a good campfire. It's my favorite analogy for what we do as incident responders, because there's so many ways you can draw on that kind of incident into how we do it with cybersecurity. So we need to have procedures which are really just work instructions to minimize the damage that the incident is causing to the organization. And a part of that, and a really big part of that, is communication and notification, right? So one thing I try and drive into any organization that I'm a part of is, if you're unsure, if you're any staff member in the organization, you're unsure and you think something has gone wrong, or you think there's something suspicious, just send it into the service desk or into cybersecurity at whatever, and alert someone about it. Get someone to have a look at it. The amount of times when I've been through an incident, someone said, well, I thought something was funny, but I didn't think to kind of report it. It's the number one thing. The earlier you can identify an incident, the faster you can contain it and reduce the damage. So from the outset, communication and notification is super important. The communication after that, there needs to be a structure as the incident escalates or is handled. It's quite possible that you will notify your line manager, and then you might notify the CIO, or the line manager might notify the CIO or CEO, or across to risk and across to, there has to be some triggers in your procedures that make sure communications work. No leadership team likes to hear about their incident from a source other than their own organization. If they hear about it from a partner, or even worse, through the media, then that has been a significant fail, because they are surprised, and then now they are concerned as well, because there's something, and they don't feel like they're in control of their organization. So it's important to get the communication and notification correctly, and that includes escalation up the chain. So putting parameters around that is really important. So a lot of the time in your incident plan, you'll have the notification procedure. How severe the incident gets determines how it escalates through the organization. And incidents, and we'll talk about this a little bit, but incidents don't stay at one severity level the whole time. They kind of peak at the start and hopefully drop off, and then sometimes they get even worse and then drop off again. So it's a running incident can have multiple kind of incident levels as you go, requiring different responses. All right, so the importance of incident managers is really important. It's not a matter of if it happens to your organization, it is actually a matter of when. This is very doomsday, and I don't particularly like the language of that, but it's most likely true. If your organization is dealing in cyber, you know, in any kind of level, and I would say that most organizations are, then it's a matter of time till someone comes knocking or breaks into something or gets unauthorized access, or there's a mistake, you know, and someone sends out information that they shouldn't have. So it's really important also from a regulatory and compliance perspective is to have an incident response plan and to have evidence of handling incidents in a good way. Auditors often ask, do you have an incident response plan? You go, yes, that's great. And then they say, can you show us an incident report that shows us that you use the incident response plan? And that's important to make sure you connect those dots and get it done. Now, there was a time when we talked about advanced persistent threats as if they were a myth, you know, about a decade ago. We're like, oh, come on, really? Are they really interested in our network? And then there's been some major cases where that is the case. There have been advanced persistent threats. There have been nation states that have been well equipped, well skilled, and well resourced to break into organizations and stay in there. And also zero-day attacks. It's going to happen where there are the likes of WannaCry in the industry and around the globe, where there is a vulnerability that is stolen from the NSA by the Russians, then released by the Shadow Crew, and then used by Lazarus out of the Lazarus group out of North Korea. Like all of this kind of crazy incidents used to be mythological, but they are actually now. And with WannaCry and the MS-17010, it was very much a zero day that took the world by storm, a wormable vulnerability that everyone only had, you know, maybe, I think it was about 6 weeks in the end to patch, and then just made its way around the world. So really very interesting times that we live in. So while incident management is important and all this kind of risk management is important to make sure we get our organizations as resilient as possible, an incident still can happen. So that's why we still need incident management. Now, outcomes, we want rapid and consistent response, right? So we want it to be mature. We don't want to pull our hair out and take rash decisions. Let's pull the whole network down, or no, let's leave it up and see what happens. You know, we want to be able to have a measured response and make sure we do the right thing when responding to an incident. We want to have communications that are well structured, like I talked about before, so that everyone is in the know as they need to be in the know. And we want to, and this is crucial for incident response, we want to prevent a reoccurrence. And the question is, what does the information security manager do in an incident? In reality, they do everything, as in they will do anything that is needed to smooth over the incident. It's not okay to say, hey, no, that's not my job. I'm not the incident response guy. In an incident, it's very much everyone works together to try and get it done. If you've got a very heavy technical resource in your team, someone who's very skilled at handling incidents and providing technical advice, then maybe they're on the containment, and then maybe the guy or girl who's not so technical but very good at policies or whatever, and drafting messages, maybe on the communications. We try and play to the strengths and get things happening in an incident. I've certainly worked in that kind of configuration where we had people on different tasks so that we could get notifications out as quick as possible. That's to the next one. So what are we going to do in incident response, and what are the types of concepts that come up? We actually want to detect and report quickly, like I was saying. This means that we can triage, which is that, I think, French word for identifying patients by severity. So really, it's overused, but a good term to go, right, yes, an incident is occurring, the patient is sick, and they are this sick, they need this kind of attention, or they need to go to the ICU, or they need to go somewhere else. And we do a lot of analysis. So analysis on logs, analysis on you know, what people have observed. I sometimes see reports of security incidents from staff like this. We have been hacked. Please fix this up, right? And then you go, whoa, and the first question I ask when someone interprets that they've been hacked from what they've seen, I'll ask, what have you observed? What have you seen to make you think that we've been hacked? And it might be the email I just received was in Chinese characters. So obviously someone's trying to break into my mail and it flickered funny. So, you know, obviously I've been hacked. So that may not be, it may be a indication of being hacked, but likely it's not. So it's important to do the analysis to understand exactly what is going on and spend the time doing that. It can sometimes feel like that you are trying to contain as much as possible, but if you don't understand some of the deeper kind of concepts and the deeper details of the incident, you may not go down the right path to start with and lose valuable time. So incident response and mitigation is very much putting water on the fire, making sure that those people know are in the know, that you've drafted comms, maybe to internal, maybe even to external, that you know what your regulatory requirements are. And then also the mitigation is around not only containing the incident as it is now, but making sure that it won't happen again by plugging those holes. And the systems that we might use in incident response, the big one is CISM, and it's really just about central logging. I'm very passionate about logging systems. I think there's no better thing for a security manager than to get visibility into the environment. I have been saved so many times by early monitoring and early alerting of an unauthorized access that to me, it's a crucial business tool for cybersecurity and for security, information security managers. But really all it is getting all of your logs from the critical and, security style applications and systems. What I mean by that is firewalls, antivirus, the stuff that handles security, VPNs, getting them all into one place where you can analyze. Where can you see kind of geolocation of IP addresses? Where can you see a 5-day view of activity so you know what is normal? Where can you see the top failed login attempts on which user? And where can you see, get an understanding of normal behavior and what is supposed to be happening on in your organization. Scott, that's a good question about theme suggestions. I just saw your question pop up. I think I'm not a massive fan of commercial themes, but I am also quite, I quite enjoy scripting and doing my own work with themes. I do like the ELK stack, but I don't like Cabana. So I like the ELG stack or gel. That might be better. So I actually like, I actually am a massive fan of Greylog. And I've kind of got my own modifications for Greylog, but I find that just getting the logs, often themes are really quite complex, and integrating them is quite complex. What I like about Logstash and Elasticsearch and Greylog is that it has so many ways of getting logs into it that just getting logs in is the key, right? It is just it just can be a horrendous task getting logs into a commercial platform. And really, and I have to say this about anything really to do with the technical, it's about what you're comfortable with and what you know and what you can get good visibility through. For me, I started a long time ago on Greylog and Elasticsearch and Logstash. And I've come to really find it the most comfortable to work with, and working with my own threat intelligence tools and pulling in things like that. I find a bit restrictive. Well, I find commercial ones quite restrictive. I find them, very. You have to wait till the next, the next revision to get the next feature. I like to get the feature myself. ArcSight I have implemented. I've implemented Envision from RSA as well. I've also implemented or have used Logarithm as well. And still I keep coming back to Greylog and Elasticsearch. I haven't used IBM Curator. I hear that is the best commercial one on the market as far as I know. And I think Splunk I like, but the my issue with Splunk is that, that big S with the line through it, the big dollar signs. Oh, Darren, that's a good point. I've played with Alien Vault once or twice. I found it a bit difficult to understand what it was trying to do. What I like about Greylog is that its simplicity in its dashboards. While that can feel like it's restrictive, it serves 90% of the function without all the kind of guff around it. And I couldn't quite work out. Alien Vault seemed to come from a hyper security perspective, like trying to integrate the threat intelligence even before getting the logs in there. But I just didn't give it too much thought, actually. Yeah. Oh, and Sumo Logic. Yeah. I have tried that. It just looked like an online Splunk to me. And there's also Logs.io as well. which is like an online elk. Yeah. And I'm quite biased in this way because I know the systems I know, and you know, obviously more comfortable with Greylog and the elk stack. But it is down to, you need a utility that you can use well and move through it and get visibility with. So that's a requirement. No, I've not seen Securinox. Okay, so that's on SIEM. A bit of a side thing there, but it's a very key part of it. If you're in an organization as the information security manager and you don't have logs coming from at least your web servers, your cloud environments, both infrastructure as a service and Office 365 and the like, and you don't have logs coming from, you know, VPN and antivirus and the security appliances, then you don't really have as much visibility as you should. One part I do like is passive DNS monitoring. I think that's excellent. It's very, very helpful. Very good for SIEM, very good for identifying infections when you don't have control over all the systems in your environment, you know, and I'm referring to BYOD. Yes, Andrew, I am. From multiple cloud environments. That's been a very big win over the last couple of years. There's some good plugins to do that are out open source. All right, okay. So the organization, who do we need to actually handle incidents? Well, we need somebody who can do these things: to develop plans and documentation, handling operational response, so the being the hands on the ground, the fingers on the keyboard, actually providing guidance and responding. The reporting side of things, with at the end, the documentation with not only the incident report, but also the strategic recommendations, and making sure that they and tactical recommendations, so make sure they get implemented.
Question on reporting, Jeremy from VACM. How frequent should one report during an incident? Is updates and?
Usually it works like this, and depending on the severity of it. Sorry, go.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, usually it works like this: is that the reporting during an incident is very much by email, as you notify people of changes, and you might come up with a structure on the fly, like, you know, what's at risk, who's helping, what the next steps are, and you might do kind of little things like that, not to overwhelm people with information, but just give them the crucial information. You may be asked for you know, an update every hour if it's something really, really crucial, but the actual report should be done at the end, because what you need to have done at the end of the report, at the end of the incident, is to sit down and analyze all the data, go through it all, and understand the entirety of the incident. And there's no way, and I can guarantee you this has been the case with me throughout my entire career, is that you don't fully understand an incident until you've written the report. And you've got to do it fairly quickly after the incident is over, because the logs and people's memory fades, and that you need to be able to get that information really quickly. So reporting may be happening, like I call it notification through an incident, will be happening fairly regularly through an incident, and then the report itself comes out after the incident.
Beauty, thanks.
Planning and budgeting. So incident handlers aren't needed all the time. So there's a question around if you fulfill that requirement inside or you get someone outside to come in. The issue with coming in from outside, it's true that incident response kind of takes a standard form most of the time, but systems aren't the same. So when someone comes in from outside and starts to handle an incident for you, there's a lot of kind of work to be done to get to understand, you know, what the environment looks like. Having said that, with the really big incidents, there'll be most likely multiple commercial organizations helping out in that case, like security firms. The business case, I don't think the business case is hard to make. You can pretty much put a plan together, you know, in a week, just to outline. You then can have that. I would suggest doing that. You get a kind of a couple of page plan with, you know, the preparation, identification, containment, eradications, and recovery and lessons learned into that document. And then the idea is that you refine that document as issues occur and incidents are handled. But it's always good to start somewhere. I think asking someone for a business case for CISM and getting the visibility into the environment may be a little bit more difficult, but very important to get that visibility. The CISM is for two primary things. One is to be alerted when there is a problem, and two is to investigate after a problem or during a problem occurring. All right, so you need to have those primary requirements on any business case that you put together for a CISM. CISMs can be expensive. They do, depending on the size of the environment, they do need a lot of storage, and they do need sometimes a lot of processing as well, depending on what you're doing with it. But yeah, they're very important. So it's important to get senior management commitment for that. Also, the incident management resources across the organization, you do have to deal with a lot of different people. Obviously in IT, because this is where system administrators are, this is where cloud administrators are, application support, HR, obviously, if someone's involved in some incident that is going to cause a problem for employment or maybe even distress, then HR will need to be told about it. Legal, very much these days, if there's any hint of private information or personally identifiable information being involved in an incident, then the discussion around the legal response is important. Also, facilities, so that's what the CISM material calls it, but we often call it property, for if we have had a physical loss or some sort of theft, particularly in a data center or something like that. And then we have PR is really important. The public relations group or marketing, maybe they're a part of that. It's a good idea to identify who those people are for the purposes of being able to submit them draft responses for the public. The security should never, in a large organization, talk directly to the media or the public. We obviously need to provide guidance on what should be said, but there are ways that words can be twisted. And I'm not saying you want to create weasel words, but certainly you don't want to catch your marketing or PR people off guard by releasing something that hasn't gone through them first. First of all, you want to be going through one conduit so the message is consistent, and you also want to make sure the message that is going out is supported by leadership. And hopefully you work for an organization and you can make a good case for being open and honest with the public as much as possible if there's a public implication. Reading Ross's comment. All right, and then there's privacy, which I just really talked about, but there is a need to notify individuals that are affected that might, that are likely to be under serious harm if from your incident. And I think the best advice I can provide for this is when you're going through an incident and you think of data that might have been exposed belonging to someone else, you try and imagine that that data is yours and your family's and how you would like your organization to treat it. It's not always going to be spot on, but it will give you an indication if you should discuss that with legal and get their advice on whether it's notifiable or not. Policies and standards are supposed to support incident response. Obviously, we don't want to have to handle incidents. An incident is a bad thing because it burns resources, it can cause damage to the organization, and basically it makes the organization less efficient. So policies and standards can help us to get to a place where there is less possibility of an incident because we set the bar at a certain level. All right, so the personnel we might have in our incident response team, these guys here look like a good response. I love their shiny helmets. I wish I could wear a shiny helmet when dealing with an incident. They just look so cool. They look like they're out of Star Wars.
I'll get you one for
They're
Christmas.
on target.
Almost there.
Yes, that's right. They're awesome. So yeah, they are corona proof. That's true. Well, they are that close to the fire, I presume. So obviously there's a few different roles within the incident response team that need to be there. A steering group is good to set up so that they can be on that, that awful conference call where you deliver bad news consistently. And then an incident management team leader kind of coordinates all of the people in the team. The incident response team leader would be the one going out there and actually driving the incident response. The incident handler would be the person with the fingers on the keyboard trying to actually deal with the incident as it occurred. An investigator might do the deep dive into, where else did this IP address go? What other systems might be affected? And cybersecurity specialist is obviously someone who understands cybersecurity and what might and might not happen in an incident. So we need skills and we need certain roles within the incident response team to work through. Personal skills we need: communication, obviously leadership and teamwork. I mean, these are consistent buzzwords. Presentation skills, which you wouldn't think would be needed in incident response, but I have given, it must be, probably presentations for maybe 25% of the incidents that I've dealt with. That could be probably about right. And it's not always due to the incident, but it might be actually in a presentation about a series of incidents that have occurred. And it's also good to be able to share this with your peers, maybe even your partner organizations. So presentation skills and putting together presentations is important. Following procedure, absolutely important. It's very difficult to take out the incident response plan when you are going through a pressure cooker of different requests from all the different angles that happen at the same time. So you've got to be able to follow that procedure under a fair bit of pressure. Integrity is very, very important. So it's a difficult thing to talk about, but there can be instances where you find evidence where the incident is much bigger than you thought it was. And there can be a temptation to not see or disregard that evidence and to, not bring it to light so that the incident doesn't, take on a new meaning or cause more, distress or even cause more work into the night. Incidents that I have run through the night and into the next day, and before we've managed to contain them, and then beyond that, picking it up when you get home and those sorts of things as well. So I kind of say to my family sometimes, and I haven't said it for a while, and it's a little bit sensational and dramatic, but I say, if I give you that call that I'm not coming home for the week, what's happened to me. And it's not, and it's a bit of a joke, but it's actually a little bit true that we need to prepare for that kind of a situation as an information security manager or the lead security person in an organization that is quite large. It can get quite serious, and people's livelihood and people's safety can actually be at risk, and we need to take that seriously. So integrity is very important. We want to be able to bring things to light, bring evidence to the table, and look at them unemotionally, and try and work out if that is something that's going to drive, that needs to drive more investigation. And then that sounds all very stressful. It is. So we need to be able to handle the stress. You know, there's a lot of ways to deal with stress after an incident. It might be, you know, some time at the local watering hole, or it might be, you know, having time with family, or checking out with, you know, a whole lot of Netflix. I don't know what it is, but it's important that there is actually thought given to the stress that an incident causes on a team as well as individuals. Problem solving is really important in an incident for obvious reasons, but technical understanding of systems can help you identify issues and solve them. Coming up with really clever ways to contain an incident is really important as well. Thinking outside the box is sometimes a lifesaver. And time management, I think when the incident's over, there can be a temptation just to kind of go, whew, I'm glad that's over. Let's kind of all take 3 days off. But I would say that the incident is still not completely over until the report has been written to a standard that is kind of approachable by the executive team, and has the detail that would satisfy all the technical resources that were involved in the incident handling process. Yeah. All right, and then obviously technical skills are supremely important. You may have them all in the incident response team. You may have Windows specialists, Unix specialists. You may have cloud specialists and firewall and network security specialists, all in the incident response team, but most likely they're scattered around the organization. I like to identify a few key resources that have been helpful in incidents, and I actually make them a part of the incident response team and get agreement from their manager that if there is a big incident that relates to them in some way, that I can drag them in and try and prep for that, because you don't want to, it's a crucial time, right? You don't want to be messing around reading articles on the net trying to work out what's been going on when you have the skills in-house to help you straight away. Okay, so there's two sorts of awareness and education that happen with information security management. One is to everyone. Everyone needs to know how to identify and report an incident, not put an incident report together, but all those frontline staff, the service desk, they need to know that if their screen pops up with a message that says your computer is being encrypted, please give us some Bitcoins to this address, that is a security incident. That they need to be able to have a very basic understanding that what is supposed to happen, what is not supposed to happen, and how to report it. These two things are crucial. I've had one recently where someone's, I think their personal account was compromised or something like that, and it was sending emails into another professional's account, something similar to that. And we approached the guy who was affected in the end, and he said, oh, I didn't know there was a service desk. I didn't know I could actually report this. That's great to know. So it's important that that awareness gets out to everyone. It is no excuse. You want to give staff no reason to say, oh, I didn't know what to do. They should really know if you know, the viruses, if there's unusual pop-ups on their screen, or they've received a phishing email that they clicked on, that they need to report that. It's absolutely crucial. And then there's the incident management team. They get different awareness and education. They get specific education in incident handling. And often this is just sitting in a room with them saying, hey, we've had this incident, and going through a mock incident. What do we need to do? What do we need to do? Let's run through the incident response process. And also good to get them all to sign a piece of paper and put it in SharePoint or whatever to say to the auditors that you've actually done some training and a run through of the incident response plan. It's also a good way to refine it, because there's nothing like walking through it with a group of people to find additional things to put in or remove. And so that's what I just said, to get the evidence from for the auditors, both for an incident, so having a plan, having the incident report, and actually having a plan that has been run through as well. Outsourcing to security providers can be cost effective because you don't have to keep the resources inside. But like I said, there is some issues with bringing them in to try and understand the incident straight away. In a big enough incident, they're likely to be involved anyway. Incident management objectives. So this is the way you might have seen in all of the slides during this short course, that there is a format in which the CISM uses that have, roles and responsibilities, objectives, deliverables, I think, and then also resources and limitations. So it's an important thing to realize for the CISM preparation that you may be doing later on, that there's a fair bit of and I use a fair bit of language associated with the CISM. So what we're trying to get out of it, we want strategic alignment. We want to be able to manage our risk. So we've talked about strategic alignment. We want to make sure the organization actually achieves its objectives and its strategy. Risk management, we are trying to keep the risk as low as possible, and this comes often after an incident where you have your short-term and long-term recommendations. Your assurance process integration, making sure that the incident response is baked into how the organization does things. And obviously value delivery, you don't want the incident response team to burn through cash, although the incident response team does like to have long lunches. You still want to deliver value for the organization. Then there's, no, I don't know if we are, Guy, actually. I think we're going to be all right. Now where was I? And also resource management, right? So like value delivery, you want to have the people on the team that are required for incident response, but also not too many resources sitting idly. So obviously you want to be able to do something else with those resources. Luckily, there's plenty to do with cybersecurity in an organization, and it's a good way to get, to have that team as the incident response is also the team that is doing project management, the risk management, the project management as in project review, from like a security consultation perspective, maybe project delivery, like security program delivery, that sort of thing. And obviously you need oversight. I've worked in some organizations that put, that charge cybersecurity resources by the hour to projects, and it was all around capitalizing. And I've been part of other organizations that it's all an OPEX cost. Depends on how it works, but obviously either way, oversight of your resources is required. All right, so KPIs for the metrics and indicators. It's really important to keep an idea of how your organization is faring on the incident response side. If you do an annual cybersecurity report, which is always a good thing to do for an organization, these sorts of metrics are really good to hold on to and develop throughout the year. Number of incidents reported, that's a great one. So, how aware are the frontline staff of how to report an incident? Number of detected incidents. So ones that are detected through the SIEM, perhaps, and not reported. Average time to respond. Obviously, you want to get that short as possible. Average time to close. average time to detect and notify. This is a really important one, because if people have actually detected it and then spend a day to notify it, that has to be called out. It should be, you should notify faster. Percentage of recommendations implemented. So if you've got short-term and long-term recommendations coming out of every incident, then you can actually rack them up at the end of the year and say, okay, which ones were actually agreed to by management and which ones were actually agreed to and not implemented. So we can try and draw on that. Then there's number of staff receiving awareness training. Good one for, again, the frontline awareness. And then the severity of incidents is also important. If you can show a graph as, how many high severity incidents, low severity incidents over time, then you can show which way you're trending, which is really great. And then time spent responding to incidents, which is an interesting metric, but it shows how much time and resources are spent in reactive mode. And if you can offset that and show how much time and resources are spent in proactive mode, you effectively, in an organization, want to, with all of this risk management, move from reactive to proactive. And that's where you want to head. Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. Very good for justification. And then performance measurement. It's not a great concept, but if your incident response is getting slower and slower, then these metrics will allow you to identify maybe where the issues are and what can be done to resolve them. All right, so our incident response plan. This is the parts of it that are important. You fill it in with the meat, obviously, but these are the bones. Preparation, we create our incident response plan and communications plan. I don't actually put that in the incident response plan. The first part is my identification, which is notify and verify. Verify is very, very important. You might want to be pretty sure that there is an incident going on before you shout it out. We declare an incident, because if you just do it based on someone else's evidence, or sorry, that someone else's interpretation of evidence, then you can start becoming the team that cried wolf. It's important to get that evidence and be sure yourself that this is happening. Identification, containment, stop spread, obtain evidence, eradication, remove cause, and then patch, recovery, restore operations, validate with the business, and lessons learned, get the report out there. So we have all these different steps that have sub-steps. There is a bit of blending between containment and eradication and recovery. You may leave patching to later in recovery, but patching in eradication might be you're dealing with a particular vulnerability that you need to patch that caused the incident. So this is how you're eradicating it. And it also may be containment. Containment may require a patch because there is a virus running loose on your network, a network virus like WannaCry or NotPetya, and it is going from machine to machine. If you patch everything, you might be able to stop the spread. So that can be, not going to answer, Andrew. And then, yeah, so that's important to look at these as not distinct. You shouldn't just go, right, now we're moving out of identification, we're going into containment, we can't go back. But it's all, this process needs to be flexible to handle the incident the most efficient way. And really, the incident response plan is a checklist to make sure you're doing everything you should. It's not a guide. Shouldn't be a limitation or a framework that stops you from doing an activity, but you need to keep some sort of discipline going on. Incident response notification, who needs to know? We don't want to provide surprises. What is the damage? People want to know what assets are affected and how they're affected, and is it being handled? You want to be known in an information security situation as being safe hands for an incident and being able to resolve the incident to fruition and protect the organization, to completion. Service desk notification is important. That's our main source of incident info. If you're an incident manager, as an information security manager, then you should know your incident response team pretty well. Sorry, your service desk pretty well. You want to build a team, you want to do some good mentoring, create quality staff, hire from inside sometimes, because that gives you good knowledge of internal, and then also make sure they get training. What are the challenges? This is another kind of terminology that's in the CISM. Obviously, lack of management buy-in is a challenge. Consensus about how incidents should be run, it can be a challenge when you're first putting it together. I would say just go with the flow until you have a decent plan, and then you can tighten it up. Mismatch to organizational goals. I don't know any organizations that don't want to handle incidents well, but maybe there is. Maybe some are so risk happy that they want to just let them slide. Staff turnover is a bit of a problem that has hit me in the past. Losing good resources can really set you back, and building up new ones is a challenge, but one very realistic one. Lack of communication processes, silos in the organization, segmentation, politics, all that sort of thing. It can be a challenge for incident response. And also having a complex and broad plan may also be an issue. I think you've got to make it as simple and clear as possible to make it effective. BCP and disaster recovery is a part of this section of the CISM. In a lot of Australian organisations, BCP and DR don't actually come under information security, and if they do, there might be a dedicated resource for it. But basically, it's about understanding how the business operates, putting a value on those parts of the business and those systems that are crucial for its operation, and working out how they would continue, and those operations and those personnel would continue to do their business in the case of a crisis. This is all just part of keeping the business viable as it's running. And I think a lot of Australian organisations and global organisations are all pulling out their BCP plan, their business continuity plans, and trying to work out what to do in the current crisis, where the workforce or the sales have dropped off. All those sorts of things have now started to be thought of. So really, getting running in a recovery state. What's a probable event, acceptable costs. If you have a recovery strategy that means, we need a completely separate site with the same office block, that might be too costly for the organisation to deal with. Then we want to eliminate threats, minimise the likelihood, and minimise impact. So we're looking as well, it's like a big risk assessment. You look at all the threats to the organisation, not just cyber, but catastrophic earthquakes, fires, floods, pandemics. None of those have happened in Australia recently. And you want to minimise the impact to the organisation when that occurs. Now, these are really important. Recovery sites, important for the exam. So get to know these, not just the session exam, the course exam, but also the CISM exam. Hot, fully operational, ready to go in hours. So a good hot site is people can walk into and start working. Warm might need a little bit of preparation before people start working, a bit of extra equipment. Cold, just basic facilities and long activation time. Mobile, maybe in a caravan or a big truck with you may be able to drive it up and people can work from there. Duplicate sites, load sharing basis. And it's interesting, some organizations are very well suited to doing, recovery sites or getting all staff to head home in the case of, the office block is not usable, or it's not good to go into your workplace, and other organizations aren't so good at it. So yeah, it's important to think about these things before it actually happens. Mirror load sharing basis on it, and also reciprocal agreement. So maybe you have partners that have facilities that you can use. Obviously not great if everyone's under the same issue, like we are in a pandemic, but if there is an issue only affecting one of the partners and they can make use of that site, then that might be a good way to mitigate the risk. Insurance is another way of dealing with incident response. They can often, pay for damages. Damages may be covered in your policy, and obviously there are some parameters around that. I've generally found cyber insurance to be quite spreadsheet driven. So they give you a list of all the things that you should have done. You tick yes or no in a kind of a binary way. Then they try and come up with a fairly plausible policy for you and a payment schedule and a premium that kind of works. But I think there is a lot of value in insurance if done really well. If you actually had an insurance policy that was based upon the risk to your organization and a kind of an organization-wide risk assessment, I'd actually think it'd be quite useful. You could use that to offset the risk of a black swan event. And that's often all you're really kind of insuring against anyway, that really weird situation that not many people could have foreseen. The cover, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, just wondering about insurance. Is like cyber insurance, is that something that you sort of get as part of a broader business insurance policy, or do you think it's worth getting a specific policy, going to a different, expert in the field and not just having it a bolt-on attachment to your broader policy?
I think generally they come as bolt-on attachments. I haven't been, over the years, I think they're very much driven like any other insurance policy. I think there's lots of, latitude for making it a sophisticated and useful exercise. But in the end, no one wants to spend too much time developing specific insurance policies for specific organizations. It's just too costly. I think you end up getting boilerplate policies for organizations maybe in the same industry, and that's probably as specific as it gets. I think that's just the way the kind of the underwriting industry goes, I think.
Yeah, and therefore, do you, as a security manager, need to talk with like a financial officer or someone who's making those sorts of decisions?
Yeah, there'll usually be a group in the enterprise that deals with the insurance policies, and they will come to you every year saying, "Oh, can you fill out this spreadsheet for me?" And you kind of say, "Well, it's not. If I fill out this spreadsheet, it's accurate to the organization, but the organization's much bigger than this. So what's the scope and all that sort of stuff?" So it's a bit of a challenge to get it, I think I don't think you should run without it. I think just like any kind of policy or insurance, it's becoming more likely that a cybersecurity incident will cause significant damage. So it's important to have anyway.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a bit of an area of interest of mine. So
yeah, no. Please get into it, Guy. Go and fix it up. I think there's still got a long way to go. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think cyber insurance also helps you. They often have access to resources as part of the insurance, so incident response, investigation, forensics, maybe even with law enforcement and things like that, so they can help offset your skills and resources in your organization. But I hope that no one, I mean, insurance is one of those things, you like to have it, but you hope you never have to draw upon it, so that, you're probably going through a fairly severe incident if you are drawing upon your cyber insurance. Things that can be included, IT equipment, software, professional and commercial liability, so things that may have inadvertently happened that damage somebody else, those extra expenses in handling the incident, business interruptions, and the loss of revenue because of that, valuable and vital records that may be lost, errors and omissions that may have occurred, fidelity coverage. I think I'm trying to remember what that is. I might put it in I might put it in the forums, and media transportation. If you know, you need to get backups from somewhere as well, it might be covered as well. Okay, now testing of the plan. We talked about this briefly, but go through the plan with a group of people who know systems, identify gaps, test your timelines, how quickly can it be done, determine the effective actions and ineffective actions that might come out of the incident response plan, and eliminate those ones you don't need. Evaluate personnel performance. I don't think I'm specifically doing that in this process, but this is something that's in the CISM. And identify errors and omissions, obviously, and get it to a more mature state. Periodic, you should do it fairly regularly. I reckon 6 months. And infrastructure and applications, to make sure you're covering those areas. You may have people in your organization that look after IT infrastructure and IT applications, and make sure they are in that testing so that they can give you the perspective of what it would look like in that team. Types and categories of tests. Again, this is more CISM words to know. Checklist review, structured walkthrough. Checklist review is what it is. You just go through a checklist and review how the maybe a BCP is gone, you know, or how a disaster recovery plan has gone. Structured walkthrough is sitting around a table and running through it. Simulation test is trying to simulate some of the incident through the actual systems. Parallel test is doing it within a parallel system. And full interruption test is actually stopping the systems and getting it going. So yeah, that's a pretty big one, pretty bold, but can certainly get your test done. Paper tests are, as they say, with documents in front of you. A preparedness test is a subset of the full test, so like you could call it a partial test. But again, this is terminology in the CISM. And the full operational test is the next best thing to the actual disaster, trying to do it as closely as possible to the disaster going ahead. So they have these types and categories, types here and categories here. These are good to know for the exam. Execution, we want to make sure that we execute plans and validate them. When we have an incident, we validate the root cause and the corrective actions, the short-term and long-term remediation that I talked about, and the recommendations. We document events in a report. We establish procedures to make sure things don't happen again. We gather evidence as we're putting that report together. And if it turns into a legal issue, then obviously we need forensics evidence, and we need to consider the chain of custody and keeping our evidence permissible to court. Which is a whole other topic, but worthwhile in this place, in this part of it. All right, and that's the discussion questions, and that's the end of the sessions. I think we are going to talk quickly about the exam. So the exam for the course is 40 multiple choice questions, 10 on each section. It will be released soon. I'll get to IT Masters for a release date, but it should be in the theme of the actual CISM exam as well. So there's a kind of style that the CISM exam questions use. They have like a bold, which is the most likely or which is the least. So they try and give you a few correct answers, and you need to guess which one is the most or the least or the most correct for that question. So it's important to think about that as you're studying for the exam. What I would suggest is going through all of the sessions, the stuff we've talked about, the discussion questions in the forums, and making sure you get a good handle on the answers to those, as they've been very well discussed. I would suggest that if you are going to do the CISM exam, that you get your hands on a CISM book, a CISM textbook of some description, and that you do some CISM practice tests, and you get enough practice tests to make sure that you are ready to sit the CISM when you start passing those practice tests. And the way I've done study for many of the exams that I've sat in my career is that I've gone through practice tests, and each time I come across a question that I'm not sure about the answer to, I write down what that topic is, or what that question's kind of actual problem is kind of drawing out. And then that creates a problem for me to go and research either on the net or in the CISM book to actually identify what the answer to that is. And I find that the best way of finding those knowledge gaps and filling them in. And that's really what you want to do for studying for the CISM. Is find the knowledge gaps, fill them in, understand the concepts. It's important to understand the theory, and you don't always want to just study for the exam. So please, while you're studying for the exam, try and take in the theory, try and take in the big picture as well. We still want you to be a good security manager if you pass the CISM and actually know the material. But knowing the material, I mean, that's what the exam's for, to find those knowledge gaps as well. So they go hand in hand. Recommendations for books. I think we had a few in the forum. Is there I think there may be a thread on that. I like I think I said it last time. Yeah, the all-in-one. Thank you, Lonray. That's the one. The all-in-one exam guide from McGraw-Hill. Yeah, that's probably the one. This is actually the book that we go through for the cybersecurity management course in the master's fully fledged course. And this is actually, the course actually goes through a gap analysis and a risk assessment as part of the assessments. So it gives you a good balance of getting the CISM, but also having to practice some of it, which is good. So we actually moved away from the official material. I've been actually teaching the official material, the official CISM book from ISACA for a couple of years, and we moved to this one because it's just a little bit more approachable. Yeah, McGraw-Hill. Cool. Now the CISM exam, the best advice I can offer you for the CISM exam is actually going onto the ISACA website and getting to understand the format of the exam. I think they break up the domains into percentages, and you get that percentage for the multiple choice questions on that particular domain. I think there are some practice tests there's a preparedness on the CISM, and I actually think it's all, I actually sat my CISM, oh no, I think it's probably about 13 years ago now.
Oh no.
Yeah, it just made me realize how long ago. I actually sat mine. Yeah, I sat mine in the Sydney, it's that place down near Glebe, in between Glebe and, it's like a race course near Glebe. I don't know if anyone knows it, but it was in a room at the top of that race course, and there was about 15 of us in there going at the, is it Rhodes? No, near Glebe. I think it is Harold Park, maybe. And I think there's about 15 of us filling in circles on pieces of paper, and I'm so glad they've moved away from that now. It's really painful.
Andrew reckons says you can take them online as of April, and Seb says that the park you're talking about is apartments now. So,
oh really?
I don't know, maybe, who knows? But
oh man, the world is changing. I haven't been there for a long time. So yeah, maybe that's true. Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, so I think there was a question up earlier. The CISM official CISM course.
Yeah, there's a few questions going around.
Okay.
Anthony's asking for someone who already has the CISP, what part of the CISM should they focus on?
Oh, right. Good question. Oh, the CISP. So I've been teaching the CISP for 10 years. Sorry, almost 10 years, for 8 years. And I think it used to be kind of true to itself, but it's been fairly heavily butchered along the way. It's very wide, deep in places, but very broad. I think it's a good certification, but probably a lot in there you don't need for actually doing cybersecurity. I think the CISP. I think they have risk assessment. There's a fair amount of duplication. I think the strategy and governance stuff in the CISM is a lot different to the CISP, as in it's not as much in the CISP, I don't think. So, you have security architecture in the CISP and stuff like that, but the governance and strategy stuff in the CISM, I think, is its strong point, and aligning with the business strategy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because a few times through the course, you've sort of gone over some of the CISM concepts or terminology,
Yeah.
and then sort of detailed how you simplify them in your practice, or for example, the threat matrices or response phases just from tonight. Is it too complex? Is it sort of too theoretical or intellectualized? Does it matter if it is?
I think it is. I think it is too complex, but I think it's part of the way that cybersecurity works in enterprises. That there's cybersecurity's while you're part of the team, every part of the organization has an impact on cybersecurity. So I think it's quite different from a lot of other disciplines. So you then have to know all about the organization and all about the ways that it can be damaged by, digital means. So to kind of combat that and to get, on top of that, there's all sorts of different frameworks that people have come up with over time and borrowed from different areas, from occupational health and safety even, and from financial risk, from all different areas to try and fit what we know about risk and dealing with risk in a kind of a new environment. And I don't think it's mature enough now. Obviously it's had 20 years, 25 years of kind of going through and understanding what cybersecurity really is, but it moves so quickly. I don't think any kind of one framework would fit for too long for any one organization. So I think putting all that together, there's been valiant efforts by many people in the industry to put together ways of dealing with this problem that is complex and difficult and quite hard to deal with. It's certainly not easy. And I think that kind of shows through in the CISP and the CISM. I can be critical of, the material and, the different certifications, but I think on the whole, they provide a net benefit because you are coming across concepts and terminology that you can then share with others and discuss with others and actually help each other to do it better. I guess I prefer a practical approach wherever possible, and to try and boil away any kind of inefficient or inefficiencies in processes, so that we can get the best gain out of cybersecurity. Yeah, that was a bit of a long-winded answer, but yeah. I think,
perfect. I love those.
It's an interesting thought how our industry has popped up with these frameworks and certifications. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, we're running pretty long, but that's okay. Yeah. It's a free course, so and the recording will be available tomorrow. So maybe we just whip through the last few questions, and then I'll go over a couple of the short course exam, far less important, I think, sort of parameters and rules and regs. Anita asks, is there any benefit to having an incident management plan that is different from a security incident management plan? For example, something
Oh, yeah.
broken versus something that we don't know.
All right. Is that the distinction between incident management as an organization and a cybersecurity incident management? Is that right? Am I reading it? Did I understand that correctly?
Any advantage is having an incident management plan that is different from a security incident management plan.
Yeah, okay. So it's the security connotation on the incident management. Yeah, okay. So yes, definitely, because security, information security or cybersecurity incident management plan has different triggers, like when you declare an incident, usually it's because there's a certain asset under threat in a certain way, and that will be unique to cybersecurity. Also, how you might handle an incident, the specifics of that, containing turning off machines, all the recommendations you make for handling a cybersecurity incident will be likely quite different. You can say there's an incident management plan for the whole organization, and a subset of that is maybe a cybersecurity checklist. You can do that, but you still need something specific to deal with those specific recommendations and actions that come along with cybersecurity. So I hope that
great. Yep, Anita's sent in. Yep, that's what she was talking about.
Cool.
And hopefully that'll answer, Camille, your first question as well. Camille has a question about a specific thing, so we might say chuck that one in the forum. We'll focus on generalities given we're running out of time. Felipe, sorry, not sure how you'd like to say it, Felipe, asks a couple questions, and maybe we'll end there. Regular disaster recovery and business recovery rehearsals. Would you advise on rehearsals?
Yeah, I've done it in some organizations. I think they can be a bit funny. They can get some weird characters out of these simulations. I think it's. I'm trying to answer this sensibly.
Is there a risk of turning people into the I guess getting complacent because it's just a bloody thing, and it'll be the boy that cries wolf sort of thing? Yeah,
maybe there's that, but also some people get really, really into it. That's what's coming to mind. That there is, that they treat it very, very seriously, and that's really good. I've been a part of. I think there was I'm trying to remember the name of it, but there was a government initiative like 10 years ago that brought the critical infrastructures together, and they went all to a winery in the country, set up it was called cyber something, everything's cyber something, and then they did it with the global kind of initiative, and Australia was a part of that, and it was the weirdest thing. Everyone got together and went through documents about, this is happening, what do we do, and it was very emotionally charged. It was very interesting to be a process. But the plain fact of the matter is, if you actually just go through even just a walkthrough, and you get people thinking about a disaster and how it might impact the organization, there is still benefit in that. I'm not sure how much benefit there is in certain industries, and I think that's the key, that in some industries, being part of telco for so long, there's definitely an effort to get on top of disasters and have a good plan that will keep the business going. Less so in other industries that I've been a part of. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Final question. Felipe has asked how to split false positives. This was asked during the CISM discussion. How do you split false positives? For example, a script running with an expired password.
I think that's so there's this part. A lot of incident response plans have rating scales, right? So, and it's a good thing to have. So you might have critical, high, medium, and low. And basically medium and low get treated the same way. High might have a an after hours response. Critical might have like a 24-hour response or something like that. But before all of that, there is a category called unrated that I often include in my incident response plans that occurs before any other severity. So when the incident is rated as unrated severity, then it is the highest priority to identify if there's actually something going on. So that's what I would save that kind of a investigation for. Someone says, oh, there's someone breaking into a server, there's 10,000 failed attempts. We don't actually know what the impact is until we get to a little bit of investigation. And during that time, where there's uncertainty about if it's intentional, malicious or not, it sits in the unrated category. And as soon as we find out what the purpose is or what's generating that, it gets a new rating. And that may go in your kind of, 4-hour update that goes to executives. It's now rated as high because it's gone from unrated to high because we found out what the cause and effect is.
Super interesting. Okay. That's the questions. I might just briefly run through exam doings. As Jeremy said, 40 questions, multiple choice. We only allow people to have one attempt at our short course exams because we like to keep them open in perpetuity. So make sure that you do all of the study you need to do before taking the short course exam. Pass mark of 50%. You'll need to do all of the module quizzes in order to unlock the exam, so to speak. And yeah, we'll try and get it out to you as soon as possible. We'll keep you in the loop about that one. Jeremy, you were talking about how the CISM exam has sort of which is the most correct response. Does it weight the questions, like 1 full mark, 75% of a mark, or 50% of a mark?
Not when I did it, and often, and I know a lot of these exams change over time, and it's important to my kind of advice to that is to get to the ISACA website and find out the specifics of it. We can put that into the forum or maybe a forum thread on that. But yeah, for the years that I've been teaching it, the CISM exam itself has largely stayed, a point, equal points for each question.
Okay.
So I don't think they've changed like that. I do know there was some time when Microsoft, when they did this, they did like weighted exams. So they would find an area, adaptive exams. They'd find an area where you'd fall down in, and then they'd hit you with that for the rest of the exam. I don't think they've done that kind of thing either. I think you have a pool of questions. You get, your pool of your allocation of that pool, and you go through it and finish it.
And there's no like sort of second most correct answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. A correct answer is a correct answer, as far as I know.
Well, we'll keep the same settings for our exam then.
Yep.
Beauty. And if you do have any questions, feel free to just chuck an email in. Honestly, these webinars and the resources that Jeremy's provided for us are, I think, the most important part of this course. So don't stress too much about the exam, but if you want to get a nice certificate at the end of it, go for it.
Yeah, good.
Okay, well, I guess that's, as Jeremy says, thanks heaps for, that's the end of the sessions. Thank you so much, Hannah, for looking after all of the course page and admin side of things and looking after the chat as well. Thank you to everyone who's come along and provided so much interesting content in the forums and chat. It's been really great. I'd have to say Ross, as usual, is pretty close to best on ground in the chat. Serial pest, I love it. Other than that, just stay safe, everyone. Hope you're doing really great. And of course, Jeremy, thank you so much. I really love your short courses. They're super informative and perhaps not surprising given you talk so much about making these technical things accessible. I find them really accessible and sort of helps me run a good course as well, hopefully. So
well, that's fantastic.
It's really nice.
Yeah, thanks, Guy. Thank you for coordinating and hosting.
Yeah, with pleasure. Alrighty, see you all on the flip side. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks everyone. Okay, see ya.